Hi, and welcome back to Jen and Dan's Natural Healing with Plants, the go-to podcast for holistic health seekers looking to harness the power of nature for health and healing. I'm Jen. I'm a whole food, plant-based culinary coach, a passionate health educator, and a master herbalist. And I'm here with Dan, an exercise specialist and a wonderful master herbalist. And together, we dive into the world of natural healing, bringing you both a wealth of knowledge and practical advice. We draw from both traditional wisdom and modern science with foods and herbs to help you achieve optimal health. So today's conversation is a little bit more personal and a little more practical as well. Today is January 2nd. That's when we're recording. And people are talking about what they're eating. So we thought, well, we should share what we're eating as well. So we're going to talk about what we do for our health. And just like many of you, we read the same headlines that you read. We see the new research that comes out. And even though we've been in this business for, I've been doing this for 28 years. I've been studying nutrition for 28 years. That's crazy. And Dan, also many, many years studying nutrition. We still get confused too. And so we want to share what we focus on, what we know is true for us, for our health and our bodies, and help you decide what's exactly right for you. We don't want to dive into the new year with strict rules and making drastic changes because that leads to failure. We want to make sure that everything we talk about is clear. We talk about consistency and we talk about choosing habits that support your energy, your digestion, your strength, your long-term health, and getting your body to its optimal weight. So, Dan, let's dive in.
Yes, let's dive in here. So, obviously, we're plant-based coaches and we're plant-based eaters. And I think, it took me a lot of years to get to where I'm at as far as my dietary practices. I did a lot of experimentation, a
Yeah, me
lot
too.
of research,
I've done it all.
a lot of school.
Yes.
And I landed on the plant-based diet because there's such an abundance of information and scientific studies and clinical evidence. I mean, it's just impossible to ignore. If you're looking for optimal health, not some gimmick,
Right.
plant-based eating. And I tell people now, don't think, oh, I'm not willing to go 100%, so I'm not going to try. No,
Right.
you should try to go as plant-based as possible, and all the details will work themselves out. Believe me, when I first started, all I ate was hummus and guacamole for like a month. I didn't know what to eat, you know?
Yes, which is something else we talked about before we got on the call was even though we've been studying nutrition for years and years and years, we've done all the diets. And Dan and I we haven't even known each other that long. I mean, but both of us kind of lived the same kind of lifestyle and tried all the different things. But I forgot where I was going with that. Not only do we get confused, but things that keep popping up in all the different diets that work, in all the research that shows benefits are eating more vegetables, which is what you're taught as a kid. You have to
Mhm.
eat more vegetables. And the more you add in vegetables, the more you crowd out other things. But we want to eat in ways. So Dan and I are both big eaters. We like to eat lots of food. We like lots of variety. And so we don't want it to be boring. So I can't believe that you lived on hummus and guacamole. That's not gonna fill. I mean, it could be very filling because there's lots of fat and there's lots of protein in there actually. But it gets boring. We need variety because we need all the vitamins and minerals. That's not a complete, that's not gonna give you all the vitamins and minerals your body needs.
No.
And we need all these different things, but a whole food plant-based diet can provide everything. Like people will say, well, then where do you get your protein? Guess what? Everything we eat has protein, carbs, and fats. Everything, even a potato. A potato is not 100% carbohydrate. And so that we can eat a variety of plants and get plenty of protein. There's lots of videos out there where you can learn about protein. So protein, so we get stuck in the carb is a carb. Carbs are not all carbs are not created equal. All proteins are not created equal. And our body doesn't use carbs and our body doesn't use protein. Our body breaks it all down. And so when we talk about protein, we're really our body needs amino acids. That's what's in the plants. That's what's in the meat. Our body has to break it down. But it's much harder on the body to break down meat. Meat, when it's cooked, it's coagulated. It binds, it's tight. And our body has to work really hard. We have to have the right amount of stomach acid and enzymes to even break that down to get to the amino acids. That puts a lot of acid and pressure on our body, where if we eat plant amino acids, that's much gentler on our body. And I know for me, so I tried all these different diets. I've done every diet out there, by the way, I think. I did not, I've never done a carnivore. I would never do a carnivore. Just because from the research, no way in hell am I ever going to do a carnivore. I would have a heart attack. And as well as being completely constipated. For those of you who don't know me, I have a history with autoimmune thyroid disease and it started out with Graves, but then it switched to Hashimoto's. And if you have Hashimoto's, then it's very easy to get constipated because your motility slows down. But anyway, where was I going with all this? We learned at the School of Natural Healing, this is after many years of following different diets, that mostly raw foods, raw and cooked, but we also learned about the amino acids and how our body processes amino acids and that our body needs to be in a more alkaline diet. And even the mucusless diet is, which a lot of people follow, a lot of our followers follow, or plant-based people follow, but it's raw, mostly raw, it's cooked and raw, and very alkaline. And we still get all of our amino acids without animal products.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because there's still a lot of people that believe if you don't eat meat or eggs or dairy, that you don't get enough protein.
Mhm.
And it's not true. I mean, I've been plant-based for, I guess it's my 11th or 12th year now.
Mhm.
I've never had trouble building muscle on this diet. And the other foods, like the solid proteins from animal food, if you eat a lot of that, it inflames the body, it raises your homocysteine, and it's one of the precursors for heart disease. So why would you eat something that
Right.
could give you heart disease? That's not strength. That's weakening your body.
Right.
And it's not just me saying this. There's a lot of pro athletes now that are going plant-based because they're finding they're getting better recovery, better health outcomes, and a lot of their pain's going away.
Yes.
Tendonitis, things like that.
There's entire football teams that
Mhm.
are, or not the entire team, but most of the team. There's firefighting. What do you call a firefighter group? Anyway, there's like a whole house. Well,
Squat, I think.
yeah. And so, where I was going in the beginning was you talked about how it was like for you a whole month of just eating guacamole and hummus. For me, it was many, many, many years. So I have only been 100% whole food plant-based since the end of 2016. I know my husband, January 1st, 2017, and I was before that. Anyway, before that, we would do meat only when we went out to eat, which we really only went out to eat on the weekends. And then we went to but which all started with meatless Mondays. We did meatless Mondays and then meat only when we went out to eat. And then before we did only when we went out to eat, we would buy 1 pound of meat to cook at home. But the hardest thing for us was to give up the cheese. And so I'm not as big of a cheese eater. I was more of a meat eater. My husband was a big cheese eater. But we realized when we were trying to go whole food plant based that we had cheese at every meal. And it was like, how do you let go of the cheese? What does a diet look like if you don't have meat and cheese? And it was really confusing. It's really, really hard when that's the way you grow up. And so if it's that hard for us, those of us who study nutrition, then it has to really be hard for people that have not been studying nutrition.
Yes, I definitely agree. And it does take a while to figure out how to design your new meals.
Right.
Thankfully, there's a lot of good cookbooks and websites now for this
Yes.
diet.
If those things had been out 10 years ago, that would have been awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, because people would say, well, just leave out the meat or just leave out the cheese. Okay, so if I ate a meatloaf with mashed potatoes and green beans, now I'm left with green beans, mashed potatoes with no milk and butter. That's definitely not going I'm not going to be full with that, right? And so it's like,
Yeah.
well, then what does that meal look like? You can't just take out the meat. And sometimes when we look at it, would that even be a healthy meal to begin with? Meatloaf, not really healthy. Mashed potatoes with butter and milk, not really healthy, right? And so trying to be healthy and eat whole food plant-based, you can't just take out the meat. That also would drop, I don't know how many calories and fat, but a lot. And so a lot of times when people switch to whole food plant-based, they lose weight really fast, which makes them really happy. I've lost all this weight, but then they end up depleted. They're missing so many nutrients because they didn't do it correctly. That doesn't mean that eating whole food plant-based is wrong. And it doesn't even mean that it's complicated. It just means we haven't been educated to know how to build a healthy meal.
Yes, and that's where I was like 10 years ago. But I
Yeah.
slowly learned, and now, it took me almost, I don't know, it probably took me 5 years to really get my head around everything.
Mhm.
I guess I'm a slow learner, but but these days, there's what I recommend certain websites for people because there's websites now with recipes and they have a balanced meal and they show you how to make a balanced plant-based meal.
Mhm.
And even the Dietetic Association says now that a well-planned plant-based or vegan diet gives you every nutrient that you need. So it's not science fiction. You can do this
Yeah,
and you're going to be a lot healthier. Most people that go this way, they get so much healthier. Their blood work, the way they feel, their blood pressure, their cholesterol goes down.
right. That
So,
reminds me of the quote Dr. Kim Williams says. Do you know what I'm thinking of?
yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh,
like,
the cardio. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, you say it.
Something like there's cardiologists, and then there are cardiologists that read the research, and then they become vegan cardiologists because they see what a great impact this diet has on the cardiovascular system. It's like a miracle.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah, yeah. He said that's the difference between the vegan cardiologist and the ones that are not are the ones that read the research,
Mhm.
right? If you read the research, you're going to be vegan. Now, there are people who respond negatively to the word vegan. And so I don't use the word vegan. And quite honestly, I'm on a farm where we have bees. We need the bees to fertilize our plants and things like that. And so I would not be considered vegan in a vegan world. So whole food plant based, meaning I eat plants in the closest to their whole state as possible. When my husband goes to the grocery store, he does the grocery shopping. We live in the middle of nowhere. And so he actually goes to Atlanta a couple times a week. And so he goes to the grocery store on the way home. And they always will say things like that he's had the produce director, manager, whatever, come over and tell him thank you for buying so much produce. And he's had cashiers say, I've never seen anyone buy so many ingredients before. And so it's abnormal for people to be buying produce, which is really sad, but that's what we buy. When we go to the grocery store, pretty much everything we buy comes from the produce section. We do buy some canned beans, we do buy dried beans, and dried raw nuts and seeds. And so we go down the aisle for those, but pretty much everything else is there. Sometimes we get some frozen food. I just bought some frozen greens because they're a little bit harder to get fresh, organic, where we live right now. And we grow them when we can. Um, but I forgot where I was going with that. But you have to buy real whole foods. And when you buy real whole foods, and if you want to make eating a whole food plant-based easy, you have to go back to, we hear a lot about macros. You don't need to count macros, by the way. But think about fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. And so I think from teaching nutrition classes over the years, even when I would teach little kids, they could usually tell me what would be a protein, what would be a carb, what would be a fat. And so our fats are in our nuts and seeds, our carbohydrates are in everything we eat if you're eating plants. And then proteins are also in those as well, mostly in our nuts and seeds and our beans, legumes. And so it's really easy if you're making sure you're getting all those different things in each meal, then you're going to definitely meet your nutrient needs. One of my go-tos is Nutrition Facts Daily Dozen. There's actually an app, it's free, the Daily Dozen app. And that's how I started. was I would use that free app, and it would be something, it's 2 or 3 servings of legumes a day. And you click on it and it tells you what a portion size would be. It's a certain number of fruits a day, certain number of greens and vegetables, and then nuts and seeds. And you just click the boxes. And that if you can follow that, you will definitely get all your vitamins and minerals and fiber that you need. And so for me, that was an easy way to transition.
Is that the Dr. Greger app you're talking
Yes.
about?
Hmm.
Yeah. His website is also a abundance of information. If you want to learn more about this, nutritionfacts.org.
Hmm.
That's where I learned a lot. I mean, that's one of the things that convinced me. I've studied that. I used to study his website for hours, and it convinced me, you know.
Yes. Yeah, me too. I think though, so for me, I started with going back to diets, right? So I studied nutrition back in the 90s and followed the food guide pyramid that existed back then, which we don't really have it. We have, I don't know, we have a plate now. Now it's my plate. And so I was eating lean cuisines. So breakfast would be peanut butter toast with banana, with a chocolate milk. And then lunch would be a lean cuisine, and dinner would be, I don't know, spaghetti with green beans or something like that. And I made sure I got the 5 a day. Remember, 5 a day, 5 fruits and vegetables a day. I would get the grain and the pasta, the whole wheat toast, whatever grain was in the lean cuisine, whatever. That diet is designed to make you sick, right? And so, and I ended up with an autoimmune disease. Most people end up on multiple medications. You may remember, you may know, you're so good with statistics. What percentage of people that are 50 or over, like they're on something like 7 prescriptions or something like that, the
Yeah.
average person? Yeah, it's something insane. And so for me, when I was diagnosed, then the woman who was over the food program at my daughter's daycare pointed out to me, she said, you really need to read the ingredients on your lean cuisine. That was how it started. And so I was like, oh my God, I had never looked at it. I only looked at the front of the box. It had rice, it had vegetables with a sauce and a meat, So it's perfect, right? Meat, vegetables, grains. I was meeting all my needs, but I didn't realize I was eating all these chemicals. And so that's number one. You want to make sure you're always reading the ingredients. But then, um, for me, the first diet I went to, I wanted to lose weight. I did South Beach. And a lot of people did Atkins. And so Atkins, I remember my father-in-law, he was diagnosed with cancer. He had colon cancer. And the doctor actually told him to follow an Atkins diet. And I was reading it, and it was bacon and eggs, and he had his colon removed. Why would the doctor tell you to eat bacon and eggs? Now I know it was a ketogenic diet. It was lower in sugar, right? But there's much better ways to eat a ketogenic diet. You can eat a very low sugar, low glycemic plant-based diet. And that diet is not only better for cancer prevention and cancer survival, it's also better for your heart. It's also better for preventing diabetes. It's also better for longevity. And so now we know all those things. So even back then, so that was over 20 years ago, I knew the Atkins diet would not be a healthy diet for someone who had just had surgery. So luckily, I stepped in and we actually moved in with my in-laws and I cooked for them, whole foods. And this was before we ate a whole food plant-based diet. But since then, doing all the other diets and doing all the research and following what's going on, I've realized more and more whole foods is definitely the way to go for health.
So, now when I first initially got into this, there's a lot of raw food vegans. And so, and some of them will tell you that if you eat anything cooked, that's it's going to kill you, right?
Right.
So, I kind of dipped my toes in that water at one point. And I'm not anybody who does that. I mean, if you're truly a 100% raw food year round, my hat's off to you because that's difficult.
Yeah.
But I
Right.
never felt as healthy on just raw. I don't think I was getting enough calories. And some of the things I don't, you just can't digest raw like they say you can. I remember Dr. Christopher saying that if you had a client that had digestive issues, the last thing you want to do is put on everything raw, you know?
Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
yeah. So I think there's a good balance. I think you had to find a balance between raw and cooked. I do believe in that. I do believe you should have some raw food every day, but you should also cook certain foods because there are certain foods you actually can absorb the nutrition better when it's cooked.
Yes.
So I believe in a balance there. It can because a lot of people I find who initially come to the plant-based diet, they look at the raw. I'm not saying don't do it. If you figure out for yourself how to do it, sure.
Mhm.
But I think that most people come back to I know I don't know about seeing a lot of raw vegans. Well, they tried the raw for a while and they had to add meat back because it just wasn't working. Well, you didn't have to add meat back, but it wasn't working because it's hard. It wasn't because you weren't eating meat.
Right. Exactly. It's because their body wasn't breaking down the foods they needed, or they weren't eating the right combination of foods.
Mhm.
And so I mentioned earlier, always read the ingredients. So anything in a box or a bag or a can that has an ingredients label, read the ingredients. And I'm not talking about nutrition facts label. I'm talking about the ingredients. What is in your food? So that's always my number one rule when I'm teaching clients to eat whole food plant-based. Number two is always eat the rainbow. And so think about what you've had today, what colors were in your meal. Like my breakfast today was pretty white and brown, not much color. I did put blueberries on there. And so I need to make sure, I haven't had anything green today. I haven't had anything red or orange or yellow. And so I need to make sure that I'm getting those foods in today. And I like to mix cooked and raw as well. Now, this time of year, it's cold. And so I'm going to have more cooked foods. In the summer, I'm going to have more raw foods. But when I work with clients too, I look at blood work and I talk to them about their digestive system. And sometimes we do need to have more steamed foods for certain people, and some people do need more raw. It just depends on their constitution, so to speak. And so that's one of the other things is so reading the ingredients, eating all of the colors that helps you get those vitamins and minerals, and eating until you're full. And when you switch from eating animal products, which are higher in saturated fat, higher in calories, to whole food plant based, you're cutting a lot of calories. So you're feeling depleted, you're feeling you're still always hungry, is because you're not eating enough. A salad at a restaurant, 9 times out of 10, is definitely not enough food. They don't know how to make a good salad. I keep saying I need to just travel around the world teaching chefs how to make a good salad because no one, every now and then I'll find a restaurant that makes a salad good enough for me, but most chances it's not. I have to order two salads or I have to have a salad and something else. They just don't know how to make a salad. And so don't think you're going to switch to salads and feel full and get everything you need. You have to really combine different things, making sure you're getting all the different colors and textures as well. Something else that Dan and I do and that we will continue in the new year is gluten free. We don't eat anything with gluten. That's where. So why did you switch to gluten free?
Well, I mean, I looked at the research, but I wasn't that convinced for me because I love to eat bread. But then Amy, my wife, we noticed every time she would eat gluten, her sinuses would flare up for days.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's unusual. So I started actually, when I would eat gluten, I would kind of tune into my body. And I noticed every time I'd eat gluten, I would feel a few hours, I'd feel tired a few
Hmm.
hours later. I would get like fatigue.
Right.
And that's not like me. I'm energetic. I mean, I'm always doing. And so I dropped the gluten and I noticed that I didn't have the fatigue anymore. And then I would eat some gluten and I would feel fatigue. And then the research, and I don't know, there's a lot of different theories out there, but I did see some research that said they believe that probably everyone is allergic to gluten. It's just what level.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you could be somebody that eats gluten and you might feel okay, but it's probably causing inflammation in your body, and down the road, that's going to lead to problems.
Yeah. The older you get, the more damage is occurring. Yeah, and that's the same with me. So Dr. Alessio Fasano with the F, Harvard doctor, lots of research and studies. Dr. Tom O'Brien talks about him in his studies quite often as well. But he says that every single person who eats wheat has leaky gut if they eat wheat. And it just depends on how well your body can recover from it. Now, for me, I was huge into baking. I went to culinary art school and I knew we needed to eat our whole grains. So I made a loaf of whole wheat bread. I made croissants. I made bagels. I made pizza crust. I made all of these things for us to eat so that we would get those 5 grains we needed a week. Ha ha. And not knowing, that that was damaging everything. And then I also had a lifetime of migraines, constant migraines. And I went to my doctor and she said, "You have to give up gluten." And I was like, "How in the world is a migraine connected to gluten?" Gave up the gluten, and guess what? Knock on wood, the migraines went away. And so I never knew that. Now that I do genetics with people. I go over their genetics and help them identify food issues. I have all the SNPs, which are deviations in the optimal or most likely genetic factor for gluten sensitivity. And so I have all the celiac genes, all of that. So now I know I definitely cannot have it. And when I do have it, I get a migraine right away and I end up with an autoimmune flare. So for me, that's why I gave it up. Now I also tested it. I gave it up for a month, didn't really notice much of a change. My blood work didn't change, and I went back to eating gluten. It wasn't until I gave it up for 4 months before it showed up in my blood work. Um, Too. And so it's one of those things that you need to give up long term. I've also had clients who give it up and then tell me they feel worse. Well, guess what? It's because gluten affects the same parts of your brain as like morphine. And so you're literally having withdrawal from giving up the bread. So yes, you are feeling worse because you're not getting that hit that you're used to getting from eating the bread.
Yeah, I remember taking a class years ago. It's in a naturopathic school I went to. She said that some of the studies show that it could take your body 6 months to clear 1 meal of gluten.
Yeah.
So that's why it took you so long to see results.
Right, right. Yeah, and some people see it right away. But and another thing that I like to think about that Dr. Tom O'Brien when he talks about gluten, when people say I eat gluten, I don't notice a difference. It's like you wake up and you bang your knee on the side of the bed. So you wake up, you hit your knee, oh, that hurt, it goes away. You wake up the next morning, you hit your knee again. Oh, it takes a little bit longer for the pain to go away. You wake up again the next day, you hit it again. And the next day, after a week, you've broken through the skin. And then after another week, it's not even going to scab over, right? And so that's what's happening inside. And so, we think about children. Children, they can eat fast food and drink Cokes and all that, and they don't slow down. But the older you get, if you eat that fast food and the Cokes and all that stuff, you wake up and you feel really sick the next day, right? And so it's because our bodies, they just don't respond as well. They're still getting the damage. Those kids are getting the damage. They can repair a lot quicker because they're younger. Their body hasn't had to deal with so many different exposures. Yes. And so one more thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap it up, we've kind of gone all over the place, was about consistency. Consistency versus perfection.
Yes, that's why, I used to be a lot more hardcore with my clients and I would scare people off, okay? And it was just me and the way I think. But if you look at the evidence, and I talk about, I usually bring up Dr. Fuhrman for this.
Yeah.
He's not as strict as some of the other plant-based doctors because he realizes that if you eat more plants than animal foods, you're going to be healthier than the general population.
Right.
And so that's a good place to start. If you're so scared that you can't do without the animal foods, I would say start with try to 80/20 at first. Try to do 80% plants, 20% animals and stay consistent. And if you have health problems, keep up with your doctor, your checkups and see how that's going. And if it's not going so good, maybe try 85. But the point is, if you have a bad day, like you eat bad one day, that's okay. Tomorrow, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, eat healthy again. Consistency is where the magic is.
Yeah, it's what you do day in and day out is what matters. Yeah, one day, like we just had Christmas and New Year's, maybe you had cake, right? Or pie or ice cream or something that day. Well, yes, that can throw you off a little bit. Maybe you don't feel really good afterwards, especially after you've been eating clean, but you go right back to eating the regular way the next day. Don't let it slow you down. Right. I love that. Yes, and don't
Yes.
worry about being perfect. And the more you eat these healthier foods, the easier it gets. And you
Yeah.
start crowding it out. Oh, I'd rather have more broccoli than having the meat, whatever. And I'm coming from a major meat eater. I had meat probably 3 times a day. I ate vegetables. I've always had vegetables, but I ate a lot of meat growing up and into adulthood.
Well, I remember Dr. Schultz had a lot of success with his clients. I remember reading that it's what you do 90% of the time. Some of his clients say he would make them eat clean 5 days a week. And
Yeah.
on the weekend, he wouldn't ask, and they would still get healthy. Now, I'm not giving you a license to go pig out on the weekend,
No.
but my point is, it's about the consistent habits like we're talking about here, and perfection will cold turkey. I'm telling you, I've seen people try to go cold turkey. It hardly ever works.
It's too hard to stick to. It's too much of a
Mhm.
change all at once. Which
Yeah.
for, like I said, for us, we eat meatless Mondays, and then it was
Mhm.
1 pound of meat at the grocery store, and then it was only meat when we went out to eat, and it was just slowly letting things go. And so just take one step at a time and work your way through it. Now, we didn't give a medical disclaimer. When you make a big diet change, it can change your health quickly. So, if you're on insulin, if you are on blood pressure medications, statins, any of those things, it could change very quickly. And so, I'm not telling you don't do this because it's going to change your meds. I'm telling you to communicate with your doctor and expect positive change. Doctors don't like it. They don't like to have to go back and change your medications, but we do. If we're like, if we can help you improve your numbers so that you can go off that medication, you are saving yourself side effects, money, so many other things, and increasing your lifespan as well. And so be really careful, monitor your blood pressure, monitor your insulin. If you start to feel dizzy, something like that, contact your doctor and get your medications adjusted.
Good advice because it will change pretty quickly.
Yeah, we've seen it. We've seen
Mhm.
it.
Oh,
Clients that
yeah.
come off the meds. And so we strongly, strongly encourage you to eat whole food plant-based. I know we will continue to do that. For me, my goal is to increase my greens. I slipped. I used to eat three greens 3 times a day, and I got away from that. But I feel so good when I eat the greens. My numbers and my blood work are awesome when I eat the greens. So that is my goal this year, increase my greens. What about you, Dan?
I'm gonna start eating smaller meals again, like practice more portion control
Hmm.
to improve my digestion and my body composition. I mean, I've always been into bodybuilding. That's how I used to eat, like smaller meals, frequent. I'm gonna try that again, except the only difference is it'll be plant-based this time. So
Awesome. Very good. Yeah, so if you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. Please comment. If you don't agree with something, we want to hear from you. If you loved it, we want to hear that as well. Share it with someone you know who is trying to make some dietary changes. If you'd like to find out more about Dan, go to danthenaturalman.com. And to find out more about me, go to holisticgen.com. That is with a W. I spell it with a WH, Holistic Gen. Anyway, thank you for joining us today, and we will talk to you again next week.